You had these three situations all really close together. You had a dismissive approach to all of these. It took, I think, 4 days before charges were brought up on the police officer in the George Floyd case. You had 72 days before charges were brought up on the gentleman in the Ahmaud Arbery case. The officers that killed Breonna Taylor, I believe, still haven't been fired and still haven't been charged with anything. And so that's where we're sitting. This has subsequently led to protests. Protests have turned violent. As somebody that's a consumer of black culture, that has a lot of close black friends, family, my wife is black, my nephews, nieces are black, my son is black. This is not me on no white savior, I'm some great benevolent ally. Listen, this is human dignity. I have a bit of a platform. I have a bit of a voice. I need to debunk these things for my own sanity so that when you guys, and by you guys, I mean predominantly, unfortunately, predominantly white evangelical Christians DM me these things, or let's just say they're not white, but they're coming from that angle. Maybe they're Mexican or Asian or whatever, right? Let's start at the very beginning. We're going to start at the very beginning. Again, remember, this is to help you make wholesome contributions to these conversations. Let nothing unwholesome come out of your mouth, but that what is helpful for building others up, okay? Christians, I want you guys to be wholesome. I want you guys to be helpful with your speech. That is the point here, okay? That is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to be wholesome, helpful, building people up. Let's start with the very first question I get. How do we know this was racism? Ruslan, how do we know this was racism? Listen, there's just, we don't know that police officer's heart. How do we know this was racist? Well, what you have to understand is that black people do not have the luxury of seeing these as isolated incidents, okay? And these all happened in a cluster together, okay? Again, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, okay? In a cluster together. So how do we notice racism? Because we're seeing them closer together, because most black people, the overwhelming majority, especially of black males that I know, have had negative experience, unfair experiences with the police, where they've been maybe roughed up, where they've been unfairly treated, so on and so forth, okay? Black people aren't looking at these as individual incidences and saying, well, we don't know if it was racist. There's a pattern here, guys. There is a pattern, there's a consistency. Pre-Rodney King. Why did people riot after Rodney King? Because this was a clear as day situation where you had a black man not resisting, not fighting back, not being violent. How do we know this was racism? We know because there's a pattern. We know because this is not isolated. This isn't a one-off situation. This isn't something that most people don't experience that are black. This is a pattern, and it's been going on way before we had video cameras, and it's been going on in neighborhoods all over the country. And therefore, when we look at the individual experience, and you could say, oh, well, that's anecdotal. Okay. When we look at the math, we will see that this is not something that is an isolated incident, that this is a pattern. And when you see patterns, you have to call out patterns. Okay. So how do we know this is racism? Couple reasons. One, because the macro numbers suggest it, okay? 1. 2, because these are not isolated incidences. 3, because you had 4 other cops specifically stand by and watch as George Floyd died. This is the point, is that these are not isolated situations. These don't happen in a vacuum. These have been happening for hundreds of years, okay? And we have made progress. And there's body cams and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't mean that all white people are evil. That doesn't mean that all police officers are evil. That's not what we're talking about, okay? But there is a clear pattern here. If there were Christians repeatedly getting killed and beat up and violated over and over, and we saw this pattern over and over for 100 years, and say some of them were speeding, or some of them were smuggling Bibles, okay? We would say, oh, that's religious persecution. It's obvious what it is. It's obvious what this is religious persecution. We would say these guys are getting killed because they're Christians, and we now see a pattern of this. Christians are 3 times more likely to be killed than non-Christians. Christians are more likely to have run-ins with the laws, so on and so forth. We would see the pattern, and we would say, this is what it is. This is religious persecution. It is against Christians, and it is not right, and people need to have their religious liberty, and we're violating that. We need to fix it. this was Christian missionaries, white Christian missionaries, that would be the response unequivocally. We wouldn't be saying, well, how do we know he suffocated him because he was Christian? How do we know that? Oh, how do we know? Because it's clear as day, fam. It's clear as day, okay? Let's keep going. Let's keep going. This is a good one, okay? There's just some bad apples. There's just some bad apples. Not all police are evil. Agreed. I got friends who are police. I've had this conversation with police. I love police. Let's have somebody else break this down. Maybe you've seen this clip. Maybe you haven't. Okay. There's just some bad apples. I want you guys to hear one of the greatest comedians of all time explain this. And I know this is funny, and I know some of us may chuckle and laugh, but just hear this. Just hear this out. Okay. Just hear this out. Just hear this out.
But here's the thing, man. Whenever the cops gun down an innocent black man, they always say the same things, man. They always say the same thing. It's like, well, it's not most cops. It's just a few bad apples. It's just a few bad apples. Bad apple. That's a lovely name for murderer. It's like, how'd they get that one? Bad apple. That almost sounds nice. I mean, I've had a bad apple. It was tart, but it didn't choke me out. Here's the thing. I know it's hard being a cop. I know it's hard. I know that shit's dangerous. I know it is, okay? But some jobs can't have bad apples.
Can't have bad apples, guys, okay? Not in this profession.
Okay? Some jobs, everybody gotta be good. Like pilots. You know? American Airlines can't be like, you know, most of our pilots like to land. We just got a few bad apples that like to crash in the mountains. Please bear with us.
Doctors, there can't be some bad apples amongst doctors. There can't be some bad apples amongst surgeons, amongst pilots. You can't just have some bad apples when you are working in industries where people's lives are on the line. There's just some bad apples. We have to eradicate that completely. And maybe, not maybe, definitely, police should be paid more, right? And Chris Rock earlier says that. He says, man, it's a hard job. Police should be paid more. And you get what you pay for, right? You get what you pay for. So, excuse me. So this whole idea that there's just some bad apples, fam, people's lives are on the line, okay? Personally, I've said this before. I've been to 7 funerals. 7. 2 of them were of unarmed black men. Okay? Better de-escalation, better training, more body cameras, all of that, better pay, all of that. But we can't just have some bad apples. That's not what happens is when there's bad apples, you know what happens? These unions step up. They protect these police officers, and they get away with it. And seldom are they charged. The Breonna Taylor situation, they're still not charged. They went into the wrong house, fam. They went into the wrong house. And they killed an innocent woman who was an EMT worker. They haven't been charged. So we can't have some bad apples. And when you have some bad apples, the culture of policing, just like any other in versus out group, the culture of policing it protects its own. It protects its own. So we cannot have some bad apple. One of my good friends, Pastor Miles McPherson, wrote a book called The Third Option. I linked the sermon in the description and in the pinned comments on YouTube. It's a great sermon. All of you guys should watch it. It's Pastor Miles McPherson. And this is all linked up, by the way. Let me show you guys this and then I'll close. This is Pastor Miles. This is his solution.
For the first time in my life, I realized that the racism I had experienced had put a cloud of powerlessness over my life. I felt powerless to the white culture. I felt like white people can do whatever they want to me. That was my experience. It's from what I experienced. It's from what I saw. Doesn't mean all white people are bad. This was my experience. And when I saw that, it triggered. And I want to say something to all my white brothers and sisters. You have power. The white culture has more power than black culture, which is why those things can happen. And racism will be eliminated when we work together, but we need your voice. we need your voice. We can't just have people of color screaming that this is wrong and speaking out. And I want to speak to my church. I need your voice. Because there are people in your family right now who are hurting. Don't get me wrong, I know you're hurting, but we've been hurting. And I want to encourage you to make your voice known. Make a video with your face and your voice saying you denounce this violence, saying that you want equal justice for everyone. Say that you believe that a black life is just as valuable as a white life. Say it. Because I can tell you for years we have heard nothing from a lot of people. Trust me, I know a lot of white people do great things, don't get me wrong. But as I said in the very beginning, you have to deal with whatever God speaks to you as an individual. And we want to help you, give you a voice. We do want to help you give you a voice, but we need your voice because the group that we're all in says, here are the things you should and should not say. God says, I want you in my group. I want you to stand up for righteousness, even if it risks some criticism.
I thought I'd be lifting my crown. Enemies sneak this in the frown. I don't wanna ever let you down. I thought things be different by now. I thought I'd be lifting my crown. Enemies sneak this in the frown. I don't wanna ever let you down.